now we are going to look at the ABCs of performance recording. And this is specifically for breed plan breeds. What do we record? When do we record it? Etc. So before we get to the nitty-gritty, I just want to share this quote with you. You can have data without information, but you cannot have information without data. And this is very true in animal breeding. So we can have raw performance records. So in other words, weights and other traits. We can have that, but if that information is not put into a form that you can understand and interpret and use, you actually have nothing. So performance records is the cornerstone of our generic evaluations, our EBVs. So without that, we can't have any EBVs. If we look at the traits that are available from breed plan, there's a number of weight traits, fertility traits, carcass traits, and some other traits that include docility, net feed intake, etc. So this is normally the basic traits that are available for most of the breeds. There is some breed-specific traits as well. So, for example, there's a sperm motility EBV in Brahman, Australia, and they can have that EBV because they have the performance data to back it. It's heritable in their breed, so they can have an EBV for it. So what is very important when you decide which traits you want to record is, firstly, it needs to be economically important to you or your clients. And another thing is there needs to be variation, it needs to be heritable, and you need to be able to accurately measure that trait on farm. So if you want to select for it, you need to record it. So this is just an overview of the recording timeline that breed plan gives us. So there's a number of traits that normally goes together that you record at the same time. So you have your joining information, your mating information, you have your traits that you record at birth, at weaning, at yearling, at final weight or 18 months of age, and then at maturity. So we are going to look at most of these traits and see how do we record it, when do we record it, and what do we need to keep in mind when we do the performance recording. So if we look at birth weight first, when should we record it? Within 24 hours after birth. So why within those 24 hours after birth? The main reason is that after birth, the calf's weight change drastically. In that first few days, it loses weight and then it starts to pick up weight again. So if you want to have an accurate representation of that calf's birth weight, we need to do it as closely as possible to the birth of that calf. Why do we record it? We record it because we can then calculate birth weight EBVs, and we do so as it has an influence on calving ease. Higher birth weights might lead to calving difficulties, and those very small calves tend to have difficulties with survival. So they might die off within those first few days. So birth weight is normally one of those that we look at a a average EBV in most cases. We don't want those high births or those very low ones. So how do we measure it? We need to use a scale. Normally the easiest is to use a pool scale with a sort of a calf cradle that you can put around the calf, or you can use a bathroom scale as well. So someone will pick up the calf, get on the scale, and get the weight of the calf. We record it to the nearest kilogram. Some other considerations: you want to record the whole calf crop, including the dead calves. So it doesn't make sense to just weigh some of your calves. We need to record all of them. And very important, if you do not weigh that calf, please do not record a birth date when you register that calf. Another trait that we record at the birth of the calf is calving E-score. We can only record calving E-scores if we regularly check all of our cows before calving. Also important to record the whole calf crop. And there needs to be some level of calving difficulty within your herd for it to make sense to record it. If there's no calving difficulties within your herd, it doesn't make sense to record it. And very important, if you do not observe the birth of that or check the cows regularly, please rather leave it blank than just saying one as no difficulty, as there might have been some difficulty, but you just didn't observe it. Then we get to weaning, so 200-day weight. So when do we record this? We can record it from 80 days of age up until 300 days of age. Breed plan can analyze 2 weaning weights. So for example, you can weigh your calves when they are around 140 days of age, and then around about 220 days of age. If you record it twice, and remember we need to record all of our calves twice, it increases the accuracy of our EBVs. So why do we record 200-day weight? We use it to calculate our weaning weight EBVs as well as the 200-day milk EBVs. And it gives us an indication of the animal's pre-weaning growth. How do we measure it? Again, we use a scale to the nearest kilogram. So you will use a normal cattle scale for your weaners. Other considerations, you need to weigh the whole group of calves together, those contemporary groups that Mario referred to. You need to weigh them on the same day. And then when you decide when to weigh these calves, you look at a date where the average age of your group is close to 200 days. Or if you want to record them twice, you do it a bit before 200 days and a bit after 200 days. At the same time, when you record your calves' 200-day weights, you also weigh your cows for mature cow weight. So breed plan only accepts mature cow weights and analyze them if they were recorded within 2 weeks from the calf's weight. So it can be 2 weeks before, 2 weeks after, or on the same date, but it needs to be within that 2-week period from the calf's weight. Breed plan analyze up to 4 mature cow weights. The more weights included, the higher the accuracy of your EBV will be. Why do we measure it? We measure it to calculate mature cow weight EBVs, and it gives us an indication of the cow's maintenance requirements and also your cow values. So normally your smaller cows are more efficient, and as an opposite to that, normally your bigger cows will have better cull values as they weigh more. So again, mature cow weight might be one that you would like to keep moderate. Then again, for mature cow weight, we use a cattle scale to the nearest kilogram. Other considerations, breed plan can only analyze a cow's mature cow weights if you take the first one before she is the age of 6 years. And there is some minimum ages as well that differs between your temperate and tropical breeds. So around about 2.5, 3 years of age is when you can submit the first one. Then at weaning, you can also do docility scores. So breed plan will analyze them if you record them between 60 days and 400 days of age. We calculate days to calving EBVs with them, and it gives you an indication of the temperament of those animals. In other words, how do they behave when humans handle them? So there's 2 ways that you can record docility. The one is a yard test, and the other one is a crush test. So you can find more information on this. But in the yard test, you have a handler that tries to keep the calf in a corner in a small yard for up to 30 seconds, and you see how it behaves. And then you can also do a crush test where you keep the calf in a race for about 30 seconds. We'll look into the docility scores just now. But we really want to score animals before there is too much human interference. So if they're used to human interaction, they will become more docile. So normally they recommend that you record the docility scores with your weaning weights, as the calves would have probably not been handled that much before that. And also important, the same person needs to score a whole group of animals, because the score one person gives versus another might differ slightly. But again, we want to pick up the variation within the group. So if one person scores it, there will be variation within the group. So score of 1 is docile, and as you get to 5, it's very aggressive. You can go through the description of each of these scores on your own. The next trait that we normally look at is 400-day weight. That we record between the age of 301 up until 500 days of age. Again, breed plan can analyze 2 of these. If you record 2 of them, your EBVs will have a higher accuracy. We use them to calculate the yearling weight or 400-day EBVs, and it gives you an indication of the post-wean growth of your animal. And it's normally important for our feedlots as they turn the animals off at this age. Use a cattle scale to the nearest kilogram, and same with your 200-day weight. You want to choose a date when the average age of your group is around 400 days. Or if you weigh them twice, you do it a bit before 400 and after 400 days of age. Then we have the final weights, or the 600-day weights, weighed between 501 and 900 days of age. Breed plan can analyze 2 of them. It gives you an indication of an animal's growth up until 600 days of age. We use a scale. And again, we choose a date when the animals are around about 600 days of age. And very important, we weigh the whole contemporary group. And I would just like to mention, with all of the traits, if you do cull animals out of your herd, please see which traits you can record on them before you cull them out of the herd, so that you can have those contemporary groups as large as possible. Then we get to scrotal size. So scrotal size can be measured with your 400-day weights or your 600-day weights. We can submit it between 300 and 700 days of age, but we normally do it with the weight of that animal. We want to record the scrotal sizes when your bulls start to reach maturity. And when there's a sudden increase in the size of the testes. So if you have a later maturing breed, you might want to only record them at about 600 days of age. So why do we record scrotal size? It gives you an indication of the age of puberty of your animals. It is related to increased semen production and also semen quality. And in the female offspring, it also is a good indication of improved female fertility and earlier age at puberty. So how do we measure it? We use a measuring tape. Pre-plan normally recommend a self-tensioning tape. Pull the testes firmly down in the lower part of the scrotum. Make sure not to put your fingers in between the testes and separate them, as the accuracy of your measurement will be out. As with your docility scores, make sure that one person records the whole bull contemporary group, so that the technique or differences in technique don't affect your measurements. Then we get to carcass traits. So with carcass traits, we have the RTU scanning traits that we can do on live animals, and we have our physical carcass traits. Both of these can be done, let me just check, I can't remember the days, 300 up until 800 days of age. As I said, we can do it on live animals, the RTU scanning, so that so we can do larger groups of animals. So you can get a accredited scanner to your farm, and he can do your whole herd of cattle, or the ones that fall within this age range. Normally with the physical carcass traits, we just slaughter a subset of your group, so immediately there's less records available. So we normally do it with the 400 or the 600-day weight. And the RTU scanning results are highly correlated to the physical carcass traits. So it really gives you good information on your carcass traits. So what traits do we measure? We look at the eye muscle area, which gives you a good indication of the overall muscling of the animal. Then we have the rib and rump fat, which gives you an indication of the fat coverage of the animal, and is an indication of the onset of puberty as well. Then we have intramuscular fat, which is an indication of the meat quality, the tenderness, flavorness, and juiciness of the beef. So when we do the RTU scanning and the results are submitted, they can be used in the carcass EBV calculations. The carcass traits are medium to highly heritable. Then we have the physical carcass traits. So there we need to slaughter the animals and take the different measurements. There are different protocols followed by the different breeds on these. So if you do want to do physical carcass trait measurements, please talk to your society so that they can give the protocol they follow. Then we get to our mating information. So the days to calving is the female fertility trait that breed plan uses. So what is days to calving? It's the time between the first mating and the calf being born. So we look at the bull in date and we calculate the number of days up until the birth of the calf. So the main variation we see with days to calving is the period between when the cow is first exposed to the bull up until conception. And if we do select for days to calving, we try to identify those early conceivers. So shorter days to calving is normally favorable, and it identifies females which reach puberty early, conceive early in the breeding season, calve early in the season, rejoin quickly after calving, and deliver a calf after a short gestation. So what information do we record with days to calving? As was mentioned, it's the number of days from the joining up until the calving. The beauty of days to calving is that you can use it on both cows and heifers. The information we record, we put in mating lists and submit that to our society. And the information that we record is that bull in date on both the cows and the heifers, and the bull out date again. And that's basically all we need, is the bull in date with the cow ID and when the bull was taken out of the herd again. So it's really easy to record. And then what we also recommend breeders to record is the fate codes or disposal details. So for example, if you have a group of cows, you mated them, some conceived and calved down, but there were some that didn't conceive and you culled them out of the herd. We want those fates. So if a cow did not calve, or she's not in the herd anymore at calving, what is the reason for that? We also recommend you to record the pregnancy results if you do preg tests, and you can also put your embryo flushes, etc., on the mating lists. So here's a list of the different fate codes. So the B code and the F code are normally the important one. So we want to know, you might have had surplus females and you sold them as pregnant heifers or pregnant cows. So you culled them not due to fertility, but you had too many females. And then with the F code, not in calf. So we want to pick up if there is a fertility issue or a non-fertility issue. Why did the cow leave the herd before calving. Then with all of these traits, we need to record management groups. So management group is a code that a breeder used to indicate if an animal or animals had the same opportunity to perform or not. So if you use the same code, it indicates that they had the same opportunity. If you use a different code for a specific animal or a specific group of animals, it means that they were treated differently or they didn't have the same opportunity to perform. This can be due to different environmental factors. For example, sickness. Some of them you fed extra because they were your show group. Some of them you fed extra grain, or you used growth promotants on some of them, or in some cases, the felt quality of your different paddocks might differ so significantly that the weights of those animals differ. Then we need to know about it so that they can correct for it in the EBV calculations. So this should be done for each and every trait. So for birth weight, weaning weight, yearling weight, for all of them, if the animals didn't have the same opportunity to perform before you take that measurement, you need to indicate that to the system, as we want to pick up the genetic differences between animals and not the environmental differences. We want to correct for those environmental differences. So the better you record the management groups, the better or the more accurate the EBVs can be. So you can use 1 to 9 or A to Z, a maximum of 3 characters. And the specific characters that you use doesn't matter, as long as you have a different code for the animal that didn't have the same opportunity as the rest to perform. So if we leave them blank, they are treated as one management group. So with all your Excel spreadsheets or in Herdmaster, you will see there's a column where you can indicate that. So then we get to the equipment. So as a cattle breeder, you need to invest in some equipment. And especially if you are a stud breeder, there is some additional equipment that you need to invest in. For your weights, you need a scale. So birth weight, as I mentioned, you use a pool scale. For all the rest of them, you normally need to have good facilities. So you need to have a kraal and a crush that you need to set up for your scrotal size. And yeah, as was mentioned, you need a cattle scale. So there's various scales out there. And as a stud breeder, it's really one of the investments you need to make. Then for scrotal size, we have the measuring tape. As was mentioned, the self-tensioning ones are normally the ones recommended, but you can use a normal one as well. With days to calving, all you need is a pen and paper. With your carcass traits, you need to get that accredited scanner with a RTU scanning machine. Then with calving ease, it's just pen and paper. Docility, you need a crush. So this is really all you need to do all the performance recording that is required of you. Good facilities, handling facilities, a cattle scale, a tape measurement, and a book and a pen. That's all we need. So breeders often tell us, but it's a lot of work and it's a lot of planning that goes into performance recording. And yes, it is, but you can really pick 2 dates within a year, and you can capture most of the traits that you need to record. So for example, if you have one calving season and your calves are born in November, those calves will be ready to be weighed for 200-day weights around about May the next year, and then a year later for 400-day weight, and a year and a half later for 600-day weight. So the colors here show that there's an overlap between your different calf crops. So if your calves are born in 2022 November, in 2022 November, your 2021 calves will be weighed for 400-day weights. Your 2022 calves will be ready for weighing for weaning weight in May 2023. And at the same time, your 2023 crop will be ready for 600-day weights. So you can really pick 2 dates within the year and capture all the records you need. Even if we have more than one calving season, I see there's a mistake on the PowerPoint here. If you have 2 calving seasons, again, there will be an overlap. So in this case, on the same day, you will have 200-day weights, 400-day weights, and 600-day weights of your different calf crops. So how do we submit the data? You would have seen that we have a session just on submitting data, so I'm not going to go into detail, but the recommended ways of submitting is via Excel spreadsheets. You can get these from your society or a compatible online recording system like Herdmaster. There's also the online option of LR Online or Internet Solutions for some of the breeds. These are currently being updated by ABRI. Then this is just a snapshot of the LRF test plan. It's available on the LRF website, and it gives you a compact document with all the different traits that you can record. When do you record it? How do you submit the information, etc., etc. So I would really recommend you to go to the LRF website and download it from there. So in conclusion, without performance records, accurate EBVs cannot be calculated. If you or your clients want to select on a specific trait or for a specific trait, it is important to record it. Performance recording should be done within contemporary group structure, and you need to use the appropriate equipment to do the recording of the different traits. And to avoid recording errors, it is important to submit performance records in a compatible electronic format to your society. And with that, I thank you. We will get to questions at the end. Thank you. We can go over to Derick now.
Thank you very much, Izaan. Derick, over to you to give us some practical applications of performance recording on your herd. Thank you.
Mario, thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, so just a little bit of background on myself. We've been breeding stud cattle for 3 generations now. Specifically Limousins, we're at about 18 years or 19 years using the breed plan system. I was fortunate to have received a lot of my breed plan training from Michael himself. And I was also very fortunate to I have spend a lot of time involved with the LRF over the years. Starting back, still a youngster, attending 1 or 2 herds in Australia, Agbu, and a lot of the guys involved with the breed plan system as a whole. And from an experienced farmer, I can tell you all that using the breed plan system as a tool can be an exceptionally powerful system. But you need to remember that it is a tool, and how you use that tool is in your hands. If you put garbage in the system, you're going to get garbage out. That means that if you submit wrong data, you're doing a much bigger harm to yourself, the industry, and other breeders than what you think or realize. And that is because due to a lot of connections and genetic connections, your information also flows over to other breeders. And if you put bad data in the system, is going to give you bad results, and you're going to make decisions based on bad information. So this is something that is very important, and I've seen it on numerous occasions where breeders typically, for instance, don't take birth weights, but they estimate the birth weight. And this leads to a lot of downfall and people saying that the system does not work properly, or why do we record? Because it's not a system that works. One needs to remember that the breed plan system is a system that's kind of alive. So each and every time that you submit data in that system, there's going to be a data run. I think it differs from breed to breed, but with the Limousins, it's done about once a month. And the data, it's like when you're building a puzzle and you're getting new information and new pieces that fit into place. And the moment those new pieces fit into place, you can see a more clear picture. And with the data that's being submitted, it's much the same. The more information you give into the system that's well structured and that's very keen and done on a proper manner, if you've got good genetic linkages, if it's sound, large enough breeding groups with a lot of genetic diversity, you're going to get very good data back out of it. And it's very important to bear in mind that recording information is exceptionally conscientious, devoted manner in which you approach cattle breeding. I always tell people that want to start off with the stud, try and run a system in which you write down your data in a dual system. And what I say when I do that is you need to work with a yard sheet as well as a copy that's processed copy, and the processed copy is then submitted. In other words, what will happen is if you're in the yard in a practical environment, your yard sheet is usually, or should be, in my opinion, filled with a bit of cattle dung and a bit of sweat, and you should see some of the frustration in that paper. Sometimes you have to write quickly, and that's where a lot of the notes that you want to do is made on. But it's also done in a hastily manner, which means that you sometimes do have a bit of mistakes. And when you take that yard sheet, you go back to the office and you start working through that yard sheet, you will quickly see where you perhaps made a few mistakes. Things that often happen is you'll write down a number which is perhaps an extension, or you'll write down, or you'll change 2 numbers. For instance, you'll write, instead of 2182, you might write 2128. And when you get to the data, you will see, but 2128 is a bull, and I worked my females today. So I know there's 21 or 40 females in this group, and I've got data for 39 of them. I know all of them was present, and by elimination, I know that instead of 2128, I should have written down 2182. And the thing with it is, if you just put it in blank there and you submit that data, the data is going to submit and capture a single data for the one bull on that specific day. So now, without being very devoted in what you're doing, you get the opportunity to give information into the system which is bad, or which is not a truthful information set. Because firstly, it's gonna, if it's heifers that you're working with and you're submitting data and you submit a data on the wrong ID number, it goes into the system, it's captured as a weight for a bull. It's a single weight. The system does not or can't differentiate from that. The system did not know that you worked females for the day. And then that bull might have a much smaller weight. It's the first weight captured, so it's the most important weight. And then about 3 or 4 weeks go by, and you do your males, and you submit the data, and you've got a second data set for that bull. And now there's an anomaly within that data because it shows a much steeper growth pattern. And then sometimes that presents as issues. So it's a very, very meticulous system in which you have to be very strict in how you do it. So do a yard sheet and process your yard sheet as quickly as possible. Don't put it into a box and say, I'll do it at the end of the month or at the end of the year when I'm finishing up with my per capitas, because you're not going to pick up on that mistakes. And secondly, remember, it's a tool. So the more data I put in, the quicker I can get results back out of BreedPlan, the quicker I can make decisions. You need to bear with that. The system is changing constantly due to the information that's coming in. And that means that your EBVs will change considerably depending on the genetic merit of that animal. The system predicts one thing, but that's not necessarily which is in front of you, because it's still a specific animal with specific genetic traits, and we are making an educated guess on what's going to happen. A lot of the times that educated guess is the correct one, but one would often want a bit of variation in what you want, because that means you've got the ability to have animals that outperform what you think they might do. So often you will see people pay higher prices for what is called proven bulls, and proven bulls often has a lot of data sets available, and the heritability is not the heritability, the accuracy on those EBVs are exceptionally high, and that is often the case why proven bulls are perhaps a bit more pricey when you have to go and pay them. So that's just a bit of feedback in when you use the system. You need to remember that if I give the system bad information, I'm going to have a blunt tool, and I can't work with a blunt tool. Rather, I not put in that information and not run with that tool, then have a blunt tool that also negatively affects the rest of the industry. So for me, submitting data is something that a breeder needs to set up his specific criteria and say that I want to position myself within the industry in a certain area. I want to be a 3 or a 4-star herd, and that means I'm going to submit this and this and this data, and within my production system that works for me. And then you can go and incorporate that very well. As Izaan said, the system is very built in that you can have 1 or 2 highly prosperous contact sessions with those animals. For instance, if we have the session in which we do weaning, from that weaning we will get that 200-day weight, we'll do the docility scores, the mature cow weights. You also use that and incorporate it within your specific production system, that when you have that contact session, you can perhaps do some vaccinations, you can treat for ticks, and you can even go as far as also to incorporate a lot of the additional traits or information that you as a breeder would like to record without necessarily it being a recorded trait on breed plan. For instance, if you know that a cow has weaned that animal, or the cow has weaned that animal, she has brought that weaner to a profitable stage. Immediately, you know that that animal has, for instance, and I'm taking an example here, you've got a cow, she's calved 5 calves, or 5 cows. She's got an ICP of 370 days, which shows she's quite profitable in terms of calving, but she's only weaned one of the 5 calves. So now that shows that we've got a bit of an issue, because that cow is not profitable. And there's not a specific EBV that shows you this. But from that one single session, we actually had a lot of information that we were able to generate and get information from, and be able to act on that information in terms of not only the EBVs, but the profitability of my enterprise that I'm running. So what that means is that when I'm recording data, I as a farmer need to generate a specific set of rules in which I conduct the recording of data for myself to be in a specific production system. I know that when I have weaning, I'm going to also do these and these and these vaccinations. I'm going to record this and this and that data, which will allow me to determine the profitability of my cows. You might be, I know some breeders, it's a practice of a few known breeders, they will score 1 or 2 additional traits, or not traits, additional information on their calves. Or you might also incorporate something as a udder score for the cow. That is something that I would prefer people not do at weaning, but it's an example to just show you that when you have a contact session, make the most of that contact session. And also try to do your planning for the specific management of your herd in such a way that every time you have a contact session, you get the most value out of that contact session, because that makes it profitable for you to invest that labor in that specific contact session. For instance, when we do that 400-day, we'll do the RTU scanning, we'll do the 400-day, we're going to do the weights as necessary. Some breeds do hip heights then. We'll do scrotal circumference. We're going to do our vaccinations again that we have to do. We're going to do a tick control. And once that's been done, those animals have been brought in from the veld. You can immediately do a selection on them if that's the specific criteria on your farm. You can immediately decide these are, we're going to keep them to run as bulls, and these we're going to throw out to the feedlot to get a return on them at a quicker stage. So what I'm trying to tell everybody is that if you do the planning for your production system, you know, I'm going to calf August, September, October. My weaning is going to be at the end of February, beginning of March. I know that I'm going to do my 400-day weights in February or March. I know immediately that now those sessions or those time frames become contact sessions in which I can get high value out of the labor that I invest into my cattle. And that gives you the opportunity to streamline your production system so that you can make the most of it and get your contact sessions down on that. Mostly when herds struggle with performance recording, it's due to them arguing that it's a painful process to do this now and this now and this now. You should remember the breed plan system is very forgiving. You'll see that age range for RTU is 300 to 800 days. 400-day wait is from 300 days up until 499 days. That's a 200-day window, a 6-month window in which you can take those trades, which means that if you've got a farming operation and do your yearly planning on that, you can go inside a lot of the data points on specific times, which you should actually have contact sessions with that cattle to prevent something like tick-borne diseases, or we know we've got to move that animals from our pastures to our maize stubble, so we know we're moving them 15 kilometers from the one side of the farm to the other side of the farm. So we know they are going to pass through the crush at that point. We're going to take specific data sets on them. We're going to ensure that all the tags are up to standard and where we want them. We're going to know which animals are in that group. We're going to move them to the new camp, and if necessarily, we might do a selection at that specific time period and say, well, these and these are animals that we're not going to continue with. So it's important that and this is not something that can be prescribed to a herd. Well-established breeders might be able to give you a bit of advice on how to do it, but a specific herd needs to go and say, this is the production system that I'm running. I'm going to do a planning on this, and when I'm doing this planning, I'm going to not only lie out the specific time periods in terms of calving, I'm also going to look at my feed flow. I'm going to look at how I'm going to incorporate this. An example for this is, for instance, if you take something like RTU scanning, they measure the fat levels on those animals. So we need a bit of variation on that. It is advisable that you do RTU scanning in the end of the lush period on your farm. Meaning that if you do that when your animals are in the least favorable condition score, you don't have enough variation. If it's on our specific farm, we know October month as well as May is the difficult months in our farming operation. So we will never do RTU scanning at the beginning of November, because we just out of the winter area. It's the harsh time on our animals. We lost a lot of weight on our animals, and we're waiting for the spring rains to bring us a bit of nourishment. Now we have to wait to go through the entire spring period and get those weights back up on those animals, get some fat content in there. And now we're in a situation where we can only do RTU scanning in that February, March, April time period. And this is still within the 6 months variation time that you have to submit that information. For RTU scanning, it's actually 500 days. So you've got much higher and much bigger window to process that in. But that just gives you an idea on how you can make the breed plan system fit into the specific production system that you're running on your farm. And it's important, because if it's difficult for you to submit data, then you're not going to do it. Or you're going to put garbage in the system and you're going to get garbage out, and at the end of the day, there's a lot of role players that's going to be negatively affected by that. So it's very important in how you approach that, and how you do that. At the end of the day, and I think I'm going to leave you guys with a little bit of this. The average life expectancy of a herd, a stud herd in South Africa, is about 4 years, which is quite shocking. And it has a lot to do with the fact that a lot of people coming into the industry has a very I don't want to say mistreated, but they think it's a very they only see the nice part of the stud industry. They don't necessarily see the hard work that goes into delivering a specific bull or a specific female to the industry. And a lot of that, and a lot of the times that a stud fails, is due to record keeping. Because if you're not exceptionally meticulous in your approach to record keeping, you're going to leave something and not do it now. And a week's going to go past, and 2 weeks going to go past, and a month's time, and 6 months' time, and a year's time, you're going to get your per capitas. Those animals are not going to be on there, or data has not been submitted. And now you start to lose the value of the product due to you perhaps not being as devoted to the specific recording system. And that means that you're actually losing money, and you're placing your own capital in such a position that you're not going to have any return on investment. And it's not the system, it's not the breed, it's not the society. A lot of times it boils down to the specific approach that the breeder has to record keeping. So it's exceptionally meticulous. If you are very, very devoted in how you do that, and you write it down, even if it's in your notebook, and once a week you've got an office day, and you put that into your Excel spreadsheet, or you put it into the Herdmaster system or the ILRI online system, you submit it, you ensure that it's on record and that the record is well kept, that it's processed, that the yard sheet mistakes you make have been rectified and have been put out to rest, then you will be very successful. A lot of times, some of the biggest and the best and well-known herds in the industry, you will often see a herd performing exceptionally, and that herd might perform very, very well for 5 or 10 or 20 years perhaps, or if he's very lucky, 30 or 40 years. And then you'll start to see a decline in a lot of that. And often it happens because breeders also lose not necessarily interest, but their lack of devotion in that specific time frame makes that they lose the asset. So a lot of the value that is brought to a stud enterprise is brought about by record keeping and meticulous record keeping. So I apologize if it feels that I come up very strongly on this, but it's because I'm very passionate about it. If you do record keeping well, and you establish it well, and you get the proper input from people that are reliable, you will most often be successful in your approach. The breed plan system will be a tool that you can use. It will be a pleasure for you to use it. And you will arguably get return on investment. And at the end of the day, whether that in return on investment is in the form of financial gain or social gain, or perhaps just a bit of acknowledgement in your own person to know that that is something that I have achieved, and I have been a proper custodian in that which God have entrusted me to look after, then it's still something that comes back to you in some way or the other. And record keeping forms the base of that. So be meticulous in your approach, be devoted, and keep that on. I'm going to leave you with a little bit of words that have always been for me a driver in what we do and that is that success is the sum of small efforts that's done day in and day out. Success is the sum of small efforts that is done day in and day out.